Europe holds its breath in the spring of 1814 because the age of Napoleon seems, at last, to be over. For a full decade, Napoleon Bonaparte, Emperor of the French, has towered over the continent. Through unmatched military skill and relentless ambition, he forged a vast empire that stretched across Europe. But now the grand coalition of rival powers has finally brought him down, defeated and surrounded, and Napoleon is forced to abdicate. He is sent into exile on the small Mediterranean island of Elba, while France restores the Bourbon monarchy under Louis XVIII, a king whose return represents the old order many French citizens had once overthrown, yet Napoleon's fall does not bring stability. Before long, word reaches him that France is far from satisfied with its new rulers. The French people have little affection for the monarchy or the aristocratic circles around it, the same privileged class whose excesses helped spark the revolution 25 years earlier. Napoleon also learns something equally important. At the Congress of Vienna, the very powers that defeated him are deeply divided, locked in bitter arguments over how Europe should be reshaped. Sensing opportunity, Napoleon chooses to act. After only 10 months of exile, he escapes Elba and returns to France. Instead of arresting him, the troops sent to stop him rally to his side. Support spreads rapidly. Within weeks, much of the nation is behind him once again. But in Vienna, the coalition responds immediately. Old disputes are set aside. Napoleon is declared an outlaw, and the Allied powers begin mobilizing for war. Napoleon understands the danger. If the coalition is allowed time to organize a coordinated invasion, France will be overwhelmed. His only hope is speed and decisive action, win quickly, then negotiate peace from strength. His targets are the nearest enemy armies, those stationed in Belgium. One is the Prussian force under Prince Blücher. The other is the Anglo-Allied army commanded by the Duke of Wellington. Napoleon knows he can defeat either army individually. But if they unite, his own forces will be heavily outnumbered. The key, therefore, is to keep them separated and destroy them one at a time. French troops cross the frontier near Charleroi, aiming to drive a wedge between the two Allied armies. The following day, Napoleon orders Marshal Ney, commanding the left wing, to seize the crucial crossroads at Cottbus. There, Ney collides with Wellington's army, still scrambling into position. Repeated French assaults crash against Allied defenses, but Wellington's troops managed barely to hold their ground. That same day, Napoleon personally strikes Blücher's Prussian army near the village of Ligny. The battle becomes a savage contest of endurance, a brutal slugging match. In the end, the French prevail. Blücher, 72 years old, leads a cavalry charge himself. His horse is shot beneath him, and he narrowly avoids capture. The Prussians retreat, but they are not destroyed. Napoleon assigns Marshal Grouchy, commanding the right wing, to pursue the withdrawing Prussians and prevent them from regrouping. Napoleon then turns his attention toward Wellington. Wellington does not learn of Blücher's defeat until the next morning. Realizing the danger, he orders a retreat through heavy summer rain to a defensive position 8 miles south of Brussels, near the village of Waterloo. There, Wellington receives a critical message. Blücher promises that the Prussians will march to support him the following morning. With that assurance, Wellington decides to stand and fight. The battlefield is chosen carefully. Wellington's army positions itself behind a gentle ridge, providing shelter from French artillery fire. His right flank is anchored at the fortified farmhouse of Hougoumont. His center is supported by La Haye-Sainte. His left rests near Péplate. All 3 strong points are garrisoned by elite troops and prepared for defense. Wellington needs every advantage available. Although the armies are roughly similar in size, his force is a patchwork of British, Dutch, and German units, many inexperienced and untested in battle. They must hold against Napoleon's veteran army until Prussian reinforcements arrive. If they fail, not only the battle but likely the entire war will be lost. Sunday dawns clear and bright. Napoleon has ordered Grouchy to keep the Prussians occupied while he crushes Wellington at Waterloo and opens the road to Brussels. But events do not unfold as planned. Grouchy becomes tied down fighting the Prussian rearguard at Waverloo, while the main Prussian army slips away and marches toward Waterloo. At the battlefield, Napoleon delays his assault, waiting for the soaked ground to dry so his troops can move more effectively. Those lost hours will prove crucial. The battle begins around 11 a.m. with a feint against Wellington's right at Hougoumont. Napoleon hopes Wellington will pour reserves into defending it, weakening the Allied center where the decisive strike will come. But Hougoumant's British and German defenders hold stubbornly throughout the day. At one point, French troops force their way through the main gate, only for it to be slammed shut behind them. Trapped inside, the intruders are killed. Wellington later calls this the decisive moment of the battle. Around noon, 80 French cannons unleash a massive bombardment against the Allied line. Many of Wellington's men are hidden on the reverse slope, but cannonballs still tear through the ranks, leaving bloody devastation. At 1:30 p.m., Napoleon sends forward his infantry. French columns advance, only to be met by disciplined musket volleys. Then British heavy cavalry charge into them with crushing force. The French attack collapses under the thunder of hooves and flashing sabers. Hundreds are ridden down, and 2 prized Eagle standards are captured. But victory carries danger. The British cavalry, carried away by success, pursue too far. They become scattered, their horses exhausted. At their most vulnerable, French cavalry counterattack, inflicting horrific losses. Among the dead is Major General Sir William Ponsonby, commander of the Union Brigade. Around 4 p.m., Marshal Ney believes he sees the Allies retreating. Acting on this mistaken impression, he launches a massive cavalry assault. But Wellington's infantry are ready. Formed into hollow squares with bayonets fixed, they present an unbreakable wall. French cavalry cannot penetrate. They circle helplessly, suffering gunfire until they withdraw. Ney's failure to coordinate infantry or artillery support makes this attack a serious blunder. Meanwhile, Blücher's Prussians begin arriving. They seize the village of Plancenoit, threatening Napoleon's flank and forcing him to divert precious reserves to recapture it. Around 6 p.m., French infantry finally storm La Haye-Sainte in the center. This allows French artillery to move forward and blast the Allied squares at close range. The tightly packed formations cannot escape the deadly fire, and casualties rise rapidly. Wellington's army seems on the verge of destruction if it does not retreat. But Napoleon's situation is also worsening. Prussian numbers are growing, and his own manpower is nearly exhausted. In desperation, he commits his last and greatest reserve, the Imperial Guard, the most feared elite troops in Europe. At 7:30 p.m., 3,000 hardened veterans march past their emperor across the corpse-strewn battlefield toward the Allied center. Wellington's redcoats rise and unleash devastating musket volleys into their ranks. When the Allies fix bayonets and prepare to charge, the Imperial Guard falters, then retreats. Sensing the turning point, Wellington orders a general advance. At nearly the same moment, the Prussians recapture Plancenoit. News spreads rapidly through the French army, the Imperial Guard has failed, and rumors of Prussian encirclement ignite panic. Discipline collapses. The French army breaks and flees. Only Napoleon's old guard remains steady, conducting a heroic but hopeless rearguard action. Napoleon abandons his carriage and barely escapes pursuing Prussian cavalry. The battle is over. Wellington and Blücher meet outside Napoleon's former headquarters, an inn called La Belle Alliance. Blücher finds the name fitting for their shared triumph. Wellington, however, prefers the simpler English name tied to his own headquarters, Waterloo. The battle, Wellington later says, was a damned near-run thing. It was also among the bloodiest clashes of the era. Roughly 50,000 men were killed or wounded, 23,000 coalition casualties and 27,000 French. Medical care was disastrously inadequate. Many wounded soldiers lay on the field for days. Napoleon was finished. Unable to raise another army, he surrendered to the British. They sent him into a second exile, this time to the remote Atlantic island of St. Helena. There would be no return. He died there 6 years later. Waterloo ushered in a period of relative European peace. The great powers would avoid major war for 40 years, and Britain would not fight on the continent again for a century, until the summer of 1914. For decades after the battle, early photography captured extraordinary images, veterans of Napoleon's armies, now elderly men in their 70s and 80s. Among them was Sergeant Tonya of the Imperial Guard, Moret of the 2nd Regiment of Hussars, and Verline of the 2nd Guard Lancers. Their faces remain haunting links to the immense events that reshaped Europe 2 centuries ago.